4 miles away from the gaudy tumult of Benares, in about 500 BC, a young Indian prince preached a sermon which would change the world. His name was Gautam, and we know him as the Buddha. I have reached the conviction, he said, that human suffering must be comprehended. The Buddha's answer to the perennial question was simple and typically Indian. It is attachment to the senses and to material desires, he said, which is the root of all human unhappiness. Get rid of those desires and you'll find the path to salvation. The period of the Buddha's lifetime, from the 6th to the 5th century BC, has been called the Axis Age, because so many of the great thinkers in world history were alive at the same time. The Buddha and Mahavira in India, Pythagoras and the early Greek philosophers, the greatest of the Old Testament prophets like Isaiah, Confucius, Lao Tzu and the Taoists in China, and even some have thought Zoroaster in Persia. It's extraordinary to think that many of those people could actually have met each other. It suggests that the ancient world, which had emerged from the first civilizations of Iraq and Egypt, China and India, was undergoing a crisis of spirit, but also a crisis of opportunity. Fundamental questions were being asked about the nature of God, about the meaningfulness of life on earth, and about the basis of the authority for kings and states. And at the heart of that, the question which still plagues governments even today in the United States and the Soviet Union. How do you persuade your citizens to act as moral beings? How do you persuade them to be good? The different ways in which those civilizations attempted to come to terms with these questions still shape them and us today. The Near East took the path of monotheism, which would become central to the ideology of the West as well as Islam. China, the Confucian conception of the individual, the family and the state in a perfectible moral order on earth. Whereas in India, the great tradition asserted that this earthly material life is simply illusion and that true enlightenment can only come by forsaking it, the absolute opposite of the Western ideology. And so the social and economic character of these great cultural blocs is still shaped by that revolutionary epoch even today. The Khyber Pass on the northwest frontier, a battleground for millennia. Here the Aryans had entered India, the first great wave of invaders. And in 326 BC, Alexander the Great's armies poured across the Khyber into India, the first great clash between East and West. But only decades later, an Indian Buddhist emperor set up inscriptions here in the Khyber, recording the first attempt to impose a political unity on India. This was the Mauryan Empire and the emperor, the great Ashoka. Little known outside his own country, Ashoka was one of the most remarkable people in world history. His story can be pieced together in his own words from inscriptions on stone columns, like this one at Kosambi, still today an object of veneration for Buddhist pilgrims. It was after a victorious war in which he killed 100,000 people that Ashoka became convinced that war was wrong. Then he developed the idea which would echo across the ages right down to Mahatma Gandhi: ahimsa, non-violence. From now on, he said, I will try to conquer by right conduct alone. And then, all across India, columns like this were set up literally as pillars of morality in order to explain what this doctrine of right conduct, Dharma, actually meant. Remarkably, it was not based on religion. It was a secular ideal of the dignity of human beings and the humanistic possibilities of civic morality. And in the clauses on these inscriptions appear all those words which modern politicians find so difficult to pronounce today: compassion, tolerance, gentleness, truthfulness. The clauses on non-violence abjure meat-eating and preserve a whole range of species, from the parrot to the rhinoceros. Forests, Ashoka says with prophetic force, must not be burned uselessly. In all this, and especially the ecology and the conservation measures, Ashoka sounds astonishingly modern to us today, perhaps misleadingly so, as he does in his wide-ranging social and welfare legislation. But so too in that bane of our time, massive state intervention, with an army of spies and thought police to check up on what people were doing. It sounds intolerable to us today, and no doubt it was to some people at the time too. But Ashoka is an extraordinary product of that extraordinary age, the Axis age, turning from the authority of religion and magic to that of reason and morality as a basis for politics. And however imperfectly he tried to execute it, his idea of Dharma, of right conduct, was one of the great ideas of human history, to set beside Greek democracy, the American Bill of Rights, the Communist Manifesto. And as one stands with the late 20th century world roaring around, one might be forgiven for thinking that this was an idea whose time is almost come. Ashoka's ideals had responded to a deep current in Indian culture. Here in the southwest, Kerala has long been a cosmopolitan place, Chinese fishing nets lining its lagoons. From the 1st century AD, Mediterranean merchants, drawn by its wealth, flocked here on the monsoon winds, as in later times did Vasco da Gama and the Chinese admiral Zheng He. From ports like this, Cochin, Arab traders bore some of India's greatest scientific discoveries to the West, including her most brilliant invention, the mathematical system we all use today. But the real motive for the trade was spice. Here in Cochin, for centuries, foreign merchants bought the famed spices of the Malabar coast, especially pepper and ginger, which are both words from South India. Such contacts help breed an outward-looking and tolerant society, as it still is. Sail up the little rivers and creeks in the Cochin backwaters, and you'll come across communities which embody the Indian idea of civilization as pluralism. Tradition says the Jews came to this village from Iraq in the 6th century BC. Theirs must be one of the oldest and loveliest synagogues in the world. They're only one family now, carefully maintaining the rites as best they can. But recently local girls have converted to marry into the family, so they still hope their traditions will be passed on. The Syrian Christians claim their church was founded by the Apostle Thomas himself. Islam, meanwhile, came by sea in the 7th century with Arab traders, peacefully, not as elsewhere by war and conquest. So here today in Chendamangalam, Hindu, Christian, Muslim and Jew live side by side. All these people of different faiths, says Krishna in the Gita, whatever form of worship they choose to fulfill their desires, ultimately their worship comes back to the same source. In the north, the impact of Islam was very different. India is full of riches, wrote the Muslim historian Al-Biruni, entirely beautiful and delightful. And as its people are mainly infidels and idolaters, it is right by order of God for us to conquer them. Within a few decades of the Prophet's death, Islam had swept westwards to Spain and eastwards to the Indus Valley. Eventually, Muslim attacks shattered the old Hindu kingdoms of the north. Benares itself fell in 1194, and in the heart of the city you can still see what results from asserting by force the unique truth of one faith over another. Mosques built out of the ruins of Hindu temples, smashed Hindu walls sticking out of the back of a Muslim prayer hall. Religion itself is outraged, said Mahatma Gandhi, when outrage is done in its name. These tragedies initiated a long and tortuous relationship between Hindu and Muslim, which both enriched India and, even in our own time, has threatened to tear it apart. In Benares, the Muslims became the mainstay of the city's economy. The thousands of silk weavers like Subhan Ali and his sons, with their tiny shops and handlooms, are all Muslim. It was here in the 15th century that the poor weaver Kabir preached the brotherhood of Hindu and Muslim. But in 1991, a rising tide of Hindu fundamentalism saw their looms smashed, saris burned and livelihoods ruined, as India's ideal of unity and diversity went through a new ordeal of fire. A mixed Hindu and Muslim culture arose in the north. And in the 16th century, there was yet another brilliant flowering of Indian civilization, the Mughals. The Mughal Empire created an art and architecture which still defines our popular image of India today, in its flamboyant mixture of Hindu, Persian and Muslim. This is Fatehpur Sikri, founded in 1569 near Agra by Akbar the Great. Akbar commissioned a great